Bit of Otis Redding there. Security.
Yeah, it's a great song, that one. I like it. Sweet.
Love Otis Redding. He was great.
Great in the thing there.
7:32 in the AM. You listen to Workers Radio on 88.9 FM. Radio Skid Row with myself, Chard and Jack Frost.
We've got Franco Collins. Franco Collins is an author and a futurist and have developed over 60 websites on global issues and solutions, 25 years. Franco started collecting work and the ideas that eventually become UCADIA. You can get it all on UCADIA.com. Or you can go to 1/evil.org or 1/heaven.org. Frank Collins, good morning and thanks for coming on Workers Radio Sydney.
Thanks very much. Thanks for being here.
No worries, mate. So what have you been up to, man? I haven't heard from you for a couple of weeks. I've been listening to your talk shoes, I should say, on Wednesdays. It's been very interesting what you've been saying and what's going on for UCADIA. Can you give to the listeners what UCADIA is about?
Absolutely. UCADIA is a project that started off about philosophy to start with and talking about, is there a connection between ideas that we normally speak of in terms of spiritualism and ideas that we talk of in terms of science. Because if you look, what you find is that there's this alleged gaping chasm between the technology world, the real world, the computer world, and then what we may feel or believe based on our history, upbringing, and so on in terms of spirituality. So that's where it started, and I worked on that, and I've created a number of texts like The Journey of UCA, The Journey of Self, and so on, which is on ucadia.com. But then it evolved. I mean, it evolved in the sense of realizing that the problem we face isn't necessarily that the ideas are wrong. In fact, I kept finding the same idea repeated over and over, but just with different words, is the systems. And those systems, I mean, is how things are put together. So society, for example, is a series of complex systems. So I started to get into the law. And as I started to read the law, what was fairly quickly discovered is that there's two competing forces for the last 6,000 to 7,000 years. There's a group that views the law as something that is all-encompassing, is equal, and then there's a group that views the law very much as a tool of control and power. The first group, if you like, are the ones that believe in the golden rule. That is, we're all equal. No one's above the law. The other one is, well, the law is something we can use to make money. And they are the people from the Phoenicians, the Venetians, and now, of course, the Roman cult for the last 1,000 years. So what we've been working on now in the last few weeks is a very simple proposition. Unearthing all the elements of the law. It's been something that we've been doing for years now. We're now on to a thing called writs. And people probably heard of writs from writ of eviction or writ of summons or habeas corpus. These are all examples of writs. And what we've been doing with writs is going back to when do they first come into being, who invented them, and really how are they supposed to work. So we're getting to a point now where we're saying to the authorities, here is your law. Here is the foundations of your law. We are following the foundations. If you don't provide remedy through your foundations, then there is no remedy, there is no law. And we're trying to get to the point to discover, are the problems people facing because there is such ignorance in their own system, or is it so broken that it can't be repaired?
Well, that's the thing, isn't it, Frank? We've got so many laws. How are they going to let that go? I mean, pushing towards having the writs. I think it's a great idea, but the forces to be, it will just stuff up their game plan that they have had over the thousands of years, and you know what I mean. And I guess in the sense, it's all falling apart. You can see it all around you. Can you see it, Chard, falling around? Like just the awakening of people at the moment. What you're saying about spirituality and stuff. That's what we're sort of looking for because of this technology rush that we're becoming robots.
Well, exactly. I mean, if you look at, there is a whole group of people, a whole generations, I would suggest, that really haven't had the opportunity yet to get to a real deep and genuine point of spirituality. They have been consumers of what was sold as spirituality, whether it be the book called The Secret or or stop poverty, or connect up to some spiritual healing.
Or the New Age, would you say, as well?
Exactly. But they've never really genuinely found, they've avoided traditional religion, but they've never really genuinely found a point of spirituality. And the exciting thing is that they're starting to realize that this is a huge gap in their life. I'm talking about, people from the age of even from 16 to, say, 35. People who really never really got into any kind of spirituality, any genuine. So definitely UCADIA is about providing some fundamental structure to that for them without people being sold a new belief system, without being sold, this kind of new age cult or anything like that. It's open source information, it's models, it's there, you can read it. If you want to find it useful, great. If you don't, that's okay. And that, I think, is really the honest way that we're approaching this with UCADIA.
Now, we had a caller in there, didn't we, Chard? He was talking about the faith. A lot of people, we were mentioning, atheism and stuff like that, and he was quite concerned about me and Chard, that we've lost the faith.
No, he said we were probably men of faith because we supposedly we believe in atheism. Any kind of belief is a kind of like an expression of faith. Supposedly.
But you see, and it's a good question you raised, but really quickly, there's an example of wordplay that the Roman cult loves us to do. The word faith. I mean, faith is hope, and faith is, let's put a cap over something we don't quite understand.
Yeah.
There's actually something stronger than faith, and it's a knowing. If you know that life is a dream, like our ancestors knew, if you know that we re-inspire, that is, we reincarnate, that is, our flesh vessels are temporary. It's like buying a car, but the driver can drive as many cars as they like over centuries. If you realize that there is absolutely no official doctrine of the Catholic Church that denies the existence of reincarnation, and yet they have taught all the sheep that you only live once, but the elite are taught that you reincarnate, then maybe people would wake up to how perverse these people are. And that this life is only one step of a journey, and it is not merely the Eastern religions that believe in reincarnation.
So the Catholic Church believe in reincarnation? No.
The senior levels have always believed, the same as the Jews have always believed in the senior levels in reincarnation. It's a fact. And if you go and look, you'll find no official doctrine that considers reincarnation a heresy. They'll refer to a few old quotes from a few, 2,000 years ago, but they're dodgy quotes anyway. There's no official doctrine on it. It's a black hole.
It is. I guess, like in living things, if it's lived before you bury it, it'll live again. I like that. That's a permaculture thing. But you're going to go into a song, are you, Chard?
Yeah, we'll go to a song, Frank, and we'll come back and we'll talk about reincarnation a little bit more.
Thanks. Just hold on there, Frank. Thanks.
That's Kaki King with the song Carmine Street. You listen to Workers Radio. We're talking to Franco Collins from the UCADIA.
UCADIA.com, onestrokeheaven.org. Is it .org? Sorry, Frank.
It's .org, yep.
And I like the, everyone likes the sort of the evil thing, /evil.org, because there has been a lot of evilness in the last so many years, or thousands of years, and Frank's got a lot of stuff for the people who have played a role in that. And
I'd love to give you one example of just some of the awful evil that they did to us, one that's relevant to us today if you go to court. And it is that if you go and look at the origin, I was talking to you that we're doing research on writs.
Yep.
And one of the things we've found on writs, and it blew me away because I'd done a lot of research, but I'd never really got to the core of it. There's a guy called Lord Blackstone who wrote effectively the manual of law for the whole Western world. It's called Blackstone's Commentaries.
Okay. Yep.
And up until the 20th century, it was considered the fundamental text for any lawyer, judge, anyone to read. Now, there isn't a judge in the Western world that if they repudiate Blackstone, they shouldn't be on the bench. They literally should not be on the bench because that is an act of complete heresy. But when you go and read Blackstone, you discover that the structure of every single court case must begin with what they call an original writ. An original writ is simply this.
Yeah.
Someone comes and makes a complaint. That complaint could be called the petition, if you like. The petition is investigated, and then there is some indictment or some summary, and then a writ is issued, and the case starts. So they cannot start, by their own system, any single action against anyone without an original writ. Now, that was in place from the 13th century until the middle of the 19th century. And at the middle of the 19th century, there was a bankruptcy. Basically, the bankers through the Rothschilds bankrupted the British Empire in 1815. And they took control. And the banking families decided to step out of the shadows and take control of the whole box and dice.
Is this the old Waterloo thing with the Nathan Rothschild?
The old Waterloo, the old chestnut. So basically, we've been in corporate structures since 1816. So under the corporate structure, one of the things that the lazy bankers hate is having to do any kind of paperwork. And the thing that they found terribly frustrating was this rule, which they can never breach. If you breach it, there is no law. There's an old maxim in English law, which still stands today, because it's actually the foundation of their system. No writ, no right. In other words, no writ, no cause. So they hated this. They hated this system.
Yeah.
So what they did was they created this idea that they would take the settlement certificates, which were the original passports. That's the original passport. You couldn't live somewhere in anywhere of the British plantations, which is what they called Australia and what they called America, a plantation, a slave plantation. You couldn't live in any plantation or in England if you were poor without a settlement certificate. So they changed those and they called them certificates of birth or birth certificates. And then what they did was they created a central register. And they said that once they created the register, all the names were in custody. They were in custody. So what they did to circumvent the requirement for original writs is they technically said from 1848 in the Summary Jurisdiction Act of 1848, along with the Births, Deaths and Marriages Act of about 1837, is that we are all in custody. We're all prisoners. And because we're all prisoners, they don't need to issue an original writ.
Now, what happens if you race out of the hospital with no registration to the state, to the cartel, the birthing certificate? But the kid's going to get upset because the fact is he goes, well, I can't get my license and I can't get my corporate this, which you mentioned.
Exactly. Well, up until 70 years ago, they had a problem, but the level of stupidity, and you've got to understand that the lawyers in this system now are so stupid and arrogant that they really they don't have any idea of their own system.
Hey, but they've got this sort of air about themselves of sort of being arrogant. That's what gets them past.
Sure, but the problem with this idea of actually circumventing their own rule is they weren't happy with it, so they added to it. So by the end of the 19th century, they went one step further. They didn't just declare that we were criminals. They declared that we were insane. They put us all in wards. Okay?
That's right, yeah.
Okay. And then that really still didn't feel right. Someone obviously came up with an argument. And so by the beginning of the 20th century, they declared us all enemies of the state. So we all became aliens. So all this layering that you hear about, people say, well, why? Why go to the effort? Because that's one of the key questions people say is, this all sounds fine, but why?
Yeah, exactly.
And the answer is this. All of this is built on this flaky presumption that the birth certificate can act as an original writ substitute whenever they take an action against you. This is the beginning of the slippery slope of destroying their own system, which they started in the 19th century. Now, you go to court and you repudiate all these crazy, stupid, and really absurd presumptions and state clearly where is the original writ, where is the original affidavit, where's the original summary. And if there is no writ, if there is no affidavit, if there is no summary, then there is no case and they cannot avoid it. They can't avoid it. So this is what we're working on.
That's incredible.